Welcome back, Gwenters, for another episode of Get Gwenting. Alright, last time we covered some of the very basics of Gwent. How to open the game, how to navigate some of the menus, and how to start a game. Today I want to talk a little bit more in depth about how to play cards, some very basic strategies, and how to keep the overall picture of all 3 rounds in mind. Let's get into it. So, like we indicated last time, what you want to do from this main menu is just go to play, click on that, open up a match, and you can do this either in training, classic, or seasonal. Today, I'm just going to start a classic match, but because I care about my ranking, I'm going to click unranked match. If you're brand new, honestly, you probably don't have to worry much about this. You have a decent chance of winning a game, and the more games in a row that you win, the better off you'll do. But because I want you to understand some of the basics of the game, I'm going to try using a deck that you would use, and that deck wouldn't fare me very well against my competitively matched opponents. So, getting into how to choose a deck. The easiest way to choose a deck is along this bottom bar. You'll see this largest window sided by 2 smaller windows on each side. Just click on that window. You'll be able to select a deck. So I'm going to scroll up and I am going to use the Monster Starter deck. I recreated it, that way we could have this video together. So I'm going to do Monsters because that's the one the game recommends for you. Personally, I don't actually think it teaches you the best fundamental parts of the game. It's not that competitive, and it really is... It has a lot of weaknesses that some of the other decks don't have in the beginning. But it's the one they recommend, and it is straightforward in some ways. So let's use that deck, and let's get into it. So just click on that game, start up a classic match. Now, some of the other things that flank the sides of that deck are just cover art. So you can change your leader, you can change your coin. There's all kinds of stuff you can change. But when you're a new player, you haven't really acquired any of those yet. So I wouldn't worry about that for now. But you can see from this guy across from me that he has a different leader than you might start off with if you had a Nilfgaard deck. So when you first launch the game, you're going to toss a coin to decide who goes first. Now, it's been decided that I am going to go second. You can tell initially, if you're ever wondering, by how many redraws you get. I get 2 redraws. So I have several cards here that I've drawn. The biggest one that I'm going to focus on for this round is Solano Harpy. I want to try to redraw a card, and I can do that by clicking twice, that will benefit Solano Harpy. I did not get one. So now, keep this in mind. Each player starts with 10 cards. There are always 3 rounds played. The goal that you want to have accomplished is to win 2 of those 3 rounds. At the end of each round, a winner will be decided, and at the beginning of the next round, you will draw 3 cards. So you want to go into the final match with the same number of cards or more than your opponent. And that will matter just for basic card counting math that we have going on here. So note, he has played a 4-point card, and I have several cards that rely on what is called dominance. So I am going to play out a higher card, notably Ice Giant, from the beginning. He is going to give me some of these benefits that I need to have. So we'll end with that. So dominance, for those of you who are new, you can click on a card and hold on it to see. Dominance is this right here. Dominance. Trigger this ability if you control the highest unit on the battlefield. Looks like he played Ardfin Crossbowman. He's playing some of these newer cards. So this wouldn't be necessarily somebody you'd play against in the beginning, but I just want to show you some of the basic strategies and ideas that you can use. So dominance applies when you have the highest card on the board. Now, I'm tied with him. Dominance will still be triggered. So I will actually want to play this card to summon another card from my deck. It looks like it wasn't actually triggered. That was my bad. It was triggered, but I made a bad mistake. So something you always want to check, whenever you have a card that says summon from your deck, you want to make sure that it's in your deck. his companion card, unfortunately, was in my hand. So I made a rookie mistake there. But mistakes are how we learn. And this is something you're always going to want to keep in mind. There are certain cards, and they're helpful to have in a lot of decks, that are called weeding cards that will help weed out cards from your deck. That way, when you draw those 3 cards between each turn, you'll have a better chance of drawing the cards you want. Now, as I've described in prior videos, a good general rule of thumb for the better cards are the color of border that they have. So you can see here, this card has a bronze colored border. And if I flip to my next card, Abaya, she has a gold colored border. She is significantly better than this card. Another indication of which is a better card is this number at the bottom right. That is the provision cost of the card. Typically, the higher the provision cost, the better the card. So, looks like we're in kind of a bad spot here. So what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to continue to try this dominance to show you how it works. So I'm going to play this Wild Hunt Navigator. He will boost one of my units by 1. Unless I have dominance, then he'll boost by 3. So we should get a 3-point boost, and we did, to that Ice Giant. So that's a great play to have there when I'm trying to lead with dominance. So, but like I said, these weeding cards are really helpful to have pulled out. So you can see right now, as I described at the end of my part 1 video, how many cards are in my deck. This deck still has 15 cards in it. If I hold it down, I can see all of the cards that are in there. Now, the goal of playing one of those weeding cards is that I would actually go down to 14 cards. And instead of having a 3 in 14 chance, because I draw 3 cards, of getting Old Spear Tip, who's worth 9 points and has a 10-point provision cost, I would have a 3 in 13 chance. Instead of having a 3 in 15, I would have a 3 in 14 chance of drawing that card. So that's just something to keep in mind. And for the final round, I would have a 3 in 11 chance instead of a 3 in 10 chance. So I now have to make some tougher decisions. Still, I have the highest card, so I'm going to continue playing dominance, but I don't really have anything, so instead I'll just play this card that should have come out before, but didn't. So now, at this point, he and I are tied in numbers of cards, and a good rule of thumb to keep in mind is the threshold of the number 4, right? So when you get down to 4 cards, if you were to win that round, the next round you would get 7, and then you can pass that round since you've already won the first one and go into the final round with 10, right? So you get 4 to begin with, plus 3 is 7, plus 3 is 10. So I want to be sure that I am going to win by the 10th, by the time I get down to my 4th card. So he has actually played Torrential Rain. So for 4 turns start, I damages 2 units in this row by 1. So I'm in a pretty tight spot. He's up by 12. I don't see a way for me to win, to play 12 points and get ahead even in 2 plays, right? So Geralt can't kill his Ardfane crossbowmen. Even if he passes this next round, I'm not going to be able to get up. So I'm just going to call it. I'm going to pass this round and move into the next. Now, something else to keep in mind whenever you're playing is what their leader ability is. Now, I know a lot of you might be questioning why I'm not talking about what cards he played. Candidly, when you're first playing, focus more on your cards. Don't worry so much about what your opponent is playing. Make sure you're playing your cards in a way that gets you the greatest bang for your buck, right? So, because of that, even though Lacerate is a really good card and damages all of his units in a row by 2, although notably it says all units, so it could be my own. I'm not going to use that on myself. But I'm going to put that away and show you some of these other cards that are important, okay? So, now, we both in this round are playing. He has 8 cards to start with, and I have 9. So I have 1 more card than him. And he is going to play one of those weeding cards to go down to 7 cards. Now, my bet is that he is going to want to pass right after this. But he was concerned about not having a card that he wanted. So he wanted to play one of those weeding cards to get down from 13 to 12 cards in his deck, which is a great strategy to use. So instead, I am going to show you how Thrive works by playing this Necker. So Thrive is boost this unit by 1 whenever you play an ally with higher power. So I'm going to put him down because he also has this ability. Whenever a card says deploy, that means they will do something as soon as they're played. This will spawn a base copy of this unit and summon it to this row. So it doesn't pull it from my deck, but it does give me an extra one of that same card. So there we go. I have one more of that same card spawned on that same round. Now they'll both do the same thing. They will both play, do that ability where they grow by 1 point each turn. All right, so now he is doing something that most players call push. Okay, so he is now accepting his fate as not being the number one, as not having 10 cards in the final round. Instead, both he and I are going to go into the final rounds with less than 10 cards unless I can win this in this one round, but I don't think that will happen. That said, I'm going to play... I don't have any cards with Death Wish, so I have no benefit of playing a Death Wish card right now. So instead, I'm going to play this Ice Giant. That will trigger the Necker's Boot Thrive ability. He is going to do 1 damage automatically to that Necker. And I'm allowing that to happen this next time because he'll still have 1 health left. And then I can play this Wild Hunt Navigator because he'll be back down to 1. So, something important to remember with Thrive ability, you always want to keep it going in order, right? So if I had a 2-point card that turn, I would have wanted to play it then, because if I play it late, then it won't boost that card. But right now, he and I both have 7 points. This Eskel Pathfinder is going to boost himself by 1 each turn, so I want to make sure to play my dominance cards now. That way I can boost my cards and get the points that I want. So I am going to boost this Necker. And he is going to get... He normally would have gotten boosted by 1, but I just don't want him to get killed by this Alba Pikeman. So I know I told you don't worry about what he's doing, but you do have to worry about what he's doing to you. Don't really worry about what he's building, but he is damaging one of my characters on my melee row by 1 every turn. And it's random, but right now I only have 1 card there, so it's really not random, right? All right, so let's pass. End this turn, sorry. We'll hand it back to him. So, something else to keep in mind is my leader ability. So you can see here, I have 2 charges, which means I can use it 2 times between all 3 rounds. And it will allow me to boost an allied unit by 3 and give it a shield. A shield, as you can read here on the right side, a status that blocks the next instance of damage dealt to a unit. Now, it's the next instance of damage. So you can see as he just played Serret, that is going to do 2 damage to my card. A shield would have blocked both of those points of damage. If he also, if you click on this shield on a Serret, it will say if Ox is in your hand. So if he had Ox in his hand, it would actually do 4 damage instead. So he could have done 4 damage, but if I had a shield, it would have stopped both the 2 damage or the 4 damage. 1 damage, any of those, a shield will block each and every one of those things. But right now, I am just trying to stay in this without having to worry too much about what he's doing. So instead, what I'm going to do is try to get him to leave me alone. So I'm going to do that in 2 ways. 1, I need to wait for Eskel to get up to 9 points, and you'll see why. And 2, I'm going to play some units that give me some points, but aren't my best cards. So I'll use this Harpy to devour this card, and I will end my turn. No, he's still up by 6 points, but I know that he is going to get boosted to 9 points. This Eskel Pathfinder boosts himself by 1 each turn, and at that point, I can play this Geralt of Rivia card. Now, when Geralt is deployed, he will destroy an enemy with 9 or more power, all in one go. No questions asked. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. And he does not care about shields. Whenever a card says destroy, it is not dealing damage. That's key for some Skellige cards that boost themselves every time a card receives damage. He does not have that worry, okay? So, no, he also played this, he spawned this Cow Carcass. This has a few different status effects that are on it right now. Doomed, which means that when it dies, it's going to disappear forever. It won't go into my graveyard. Spying, which means he's the one who played it, and it's actually his card on my side of the board. And then it will poison the units next to it. So I'm going to play my Geralt card. I'm going to shut down his Esco Pathfinder. We both have the same number of points, so I'm actually going to boost my Ice Giant and give it a shield. That way I'm in the lead, and then I will end my turn. All right, so now we are up 20 points to 22, but he has poisoned two of my cards, Solana Harpy and Geralt of Rivia. So he is going to play that Rod Tosser and spawn a cow carcass again. He's going to play it between both of those cards. Now, how poison works is when it is procced on a card, or when it's put onto one of your cards, it will sit there until another poison is played on it, and then it will kill that card, no questions asked. Very similar to the Geralt Destroy. So I want to prevent him from poisoning those cards twice. But most importantly, I want to prevent him from poisoning the card with the most points twice. So what I'm actually going to do is, instead of playing a unit card there, I'm going to play this Thunderbolt card. Place it here. Now this Thunderbolt card I can use to give a character 3 points twice. Now if I did that to a card twice, I would go up in points, but he's going to kill my Geralt, so I'm not going to be able to beat him right now anyway, so I am just going to end my turn. I'm going to keep that artifact and use it in the next turn. There are a couple of cards that can destroy artifacts, but they're very rare, and they probably wouldn't be a great use for him. He could ruin my game, but I don't think that that's true. Instead, he used Lacerate. Now you can see it did 2 damage to each unit in my row. This Harpy was at 6, it's now at 4. But the Ice Giant was at 10, and it's still at 10 because it had that shield on it. So now instead what I'm going to do this turn, I need to go up by 14 points. So I am going to play this Abaya, even though I'm not triggering a Death Wish ability, which I would have preferred to do. She has Thrive as well. So I want to get the Thrive on my Necker going, and I want to get the Thrive on my Abaya going. I also want to get as many points as I can this turn to get him to leave me alone. So I'm going to place a shield and boost that Necker, and then I'm going to boost this Ice Giant just once. And then I'm going to boost this Solana Harpy just once. I now have the lead by 2 points. And he is going to do 1 random damage at the end of his turn that is going to hit this card, but it has a shield on it now, so he's not going to do any damage. Note also, his leader ability can only be used once between all 3 rounds, and he's already used it. So, unless he can do some magic this turn, I have a pretty good shot at staying alive. And there we go, we're still in it. So, something also to keep in mind, I could have done before, is whenever you have a card that consumes an allied unit, it will destroy a unit and boost itself by its power. So in this case, Solana Harpy is going to play down, and because I'm not worried now because he just played his last card, you can consume a card that has a status effect on it to make that status effect go away. So that can be another way to protect against poison. Also note that the base value of my card was only 5, but because the deploy ability happens before the thrives occur, the fact that he was at 13 points triggered this the Necker's Thrive as well as Abaya's Thrive. So consume units are a great way to trigger Thrive ability. Now I'm up by 2 points. He did 1 at the end of his turn, but he has passed. So long as your opponent has already passed when you passed, it will end at the end of your turn. If they have not passed and you're passing first, always keep in mind that their abilities, their passives, like that damage the unit on the other side at the end of every turn, will still occur. That's something that's always important to keep in mind. You noted how he had already passed, but still did that 1 damage the next turn, even though he had already passed. So always keep that in mind. Now, here are some great cards. Old Spear Tip is 9 points. Osril is going to be able to consume one of my units or his units and take its points from the graveyard. This Ghoul is going to do the same thing. Now, Alzor's Thunder does 5 damage. And I could change this out, but I'm going to look in my deck real quick to see if there's something else I want. Yes, this Alpha Werewolf is a great card. I think I'd prefer that. Oh, he lost his connection. So we're going to try to shoot for that twice. We didn't get it, but we still got Lacerate. All right, because I won the last round, I go first. So we are going to play down Ghoul. I'm going to show you how you can consume a card. You have to play him in the row of designation in order to use his ability. So you'll see it says deploy, which happens right when he is played, and then it shows melee. Melee is the front row. Ranged is the back row. So you need to play this card in the front row in order for its ability to be triggered. So we're going to play this Ghoul into the front row, and I want to consume the highest card. This is a good reason why you want to play your Ice Giants first. Now, a key difference between cards, just say, oh, isn't that similar to what Osriel does? Now, Ghoul can only consume a bronze unit. That's that bronze outline on a card. So Ice Giants are very important for the monster deck, even though they don't have any special abilities, because they are a bronze card worth 7 points. So you can go ahead and devour them and take all 7 of those points. Osriel, on the other hand, does not have that limitation. Plus, he has 2 options. He can consume a unit from my opponent's graveyard if I play him on my front row, or from my graveyard if I play him on my back row. Now, if I hold down on his deck, I'm going to be able to see what he has. He has a 6-point card, Eskel Pathfinder. Now, that's not as high as my 7-point card, but there are certain cards that can let him take cards out of his graveyard. So I am actually going to consume that card, just because I don't want him to somehow bring it back and use it later. So even though I could have gotten 1 more point, I feel fairly comfortable at my 15 points with first card out and with last card down, because I had 1 more card than my opponent. And unwittingly, he has done a great job in demonstrating to you why it is so important to stay aware of card advantage. Now, whenever you are going first in a game, you'll notice you start with that tactical advantage. He started with the card that allowed him to give himself 5 points. That's what every player who is new starts with. One of the recent expansions adds some new cards that you saw in my last video. I have one that spawns the Scuyatel Neophytes. You won't be seeing those probably for a little while, so get used to that extra 5 points. The reason you get that is because when you go first, your cards are going to be on the table for your opponent to respond to without being able to do anything yourself. And for that reason, that's why we're going to save Lacerate till last. We want to see what he plays and then decide how to use it best. Right? So let's see what he plays next. Instead, we'll play down Old Spear Tip, and we are ahead 24-8. He has played Sweers. Sweers has to be played to the melee row to be worthwhile. Now, had I played Lacerate last turn, I would have done 2 damage to every unit on a row, would have only done it to the front row because artifacts are not units. You can tell by this sign on the top left. Instead, I can play Lacerate now, though, against 2 cards on his front row because he had to play his other card. So we're going to go ahead and play that down. And there you go. We did 4 damage to him and won 10-24. So this is a good reason, even though I made that big mistake in the first round of not looking at my hand to make sure I was summoning a card that was actually in my deck. But I also was able to be patient in the second round, despite him being in the lead from having won that first round, and only win by 2 points, which means that I did a great job of preserving as many points as I could for the final round, just like you saw. I had Ghoul, Osriel, and Old Spear Tip, all 3 of which are great, some of the best cards from the monster starter deck. Now, keep in mind when you play monsters, that when you play Osriel or Ghoul, you probably want to play them in a later round, because they are going to be consuming those cards in your graveyard. Another option that you could use, however, is you can use those Solano Harpies, those Harpies that consume your cards. When they consume your own cards, those cards go to the graveyard. And you could use the Ghouls and Osriel in that same round, but you have to use them after those cards have gone to the graveyard. So that's some of the sequencing that you need to think about in Gwent. That's some of the basics about card advantage and why the person who goes first gets that extra 5 points. Just like you saw, I was able to do 2 more damage because I went last. Now, granted, I had an extra card, which is why I got to both go first and go last, which is why card advantage matters so much when it comes to numerical card advantage. You want to have as many cards as possible against your opponent in the round that matters. Now, if you're able to trick them or do really well in the first round and have the same number or even more cards than them from the first round, the second round might be that round where you can use card advantage. You might have to go first because whoever wins a round will have to go first the next round, but you can still push them and win. So you can do that. You can push in 2 ways. You can push to win, or you can push to draw out their best cards or to make them use their leader ability to stay in the game, keeping some of your cards to go in the final round where you won't have to go first. So there's a few ways that you can play that. And because it is a 3-round game, a lot of players have locked in from the very first round how they want to play the game. And most people will shoot for win first round, pass second round, win third round. Use that to your advantage. They are expecting and hoping to do it in that order most of the time. If you can turn that on its head, that's a great way for you to win, as you just saw with this game. Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining. As always, have fun, get out there, go Gwenting. Post any comments you have, give me a like, throw on a subscribe, and if you'd like to see anything specific in my next video, please let me know. Thank you and have a great day.